It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
2025 is at an end. What will 2026 bring? How many are actually willing to face the answer to that question? From MSN, meteorologist says, get ready because an extremely rare winter pattern is developing that could shatter records. No, not could, not may, not might, is shattering records. Far more than we're being officially told, and far more records than are officially being reported. The MSN article is referring to the extreme winter season record warmth in the U.S. But what about the fire hosing of rain into the U.S. West? The weather terrorists are core to the devastating disruption of the global hydrological cycle. Where it rains, when it rains, how much it rains, and how toxic that rain will be. They can scatter precipitation for days, featureless skies with constant drizzle and drip, or they can, and often do, manipulate devastating deluges, often over the most vulnerable regions like burn scars or agriculture or urban regions. All over the board, scheduled weather scripts that often don't match from one matrix media source to another because someone didn't get the script in time. In my Northern California off-grid wilderness location, days of scheduled rain that only deliver, again, drizzles and drips, and when you least expect it, in this case last Sunday, with no warning from the scheduled weather script readers, a devastating record double-digit inch rain devastation deluge. The only warning residents in my region got is after the climate engineers had altered the scheduled weather script and the over 10-inch deluge was well underway. My cell phone emergency declaration by authorities came only after, again, this started. The event wasn't predicted, aka scheduled, and the over 10 inches of rain came so fast and furious, and the washouts in the steep canyons that surround me were so severe that the raging water literally scoured off all soil, vegetation, and trees. A considerable length of the canyon walls scrubbed down to the bedrock, with all the material washing down the canyons and into Lake Shasta, further reducing the lake's holding capacity from the sediment and debris washouts. To anyone that's still trying to convince themselves that the ongoing geoengineering programs are just well-meaning climate mitigation operations gone wrong, please wake up. What's taking place in our skies is nothing short of weather, chemical, and biological warfare on an unsuspecting population that honestly, in far too many cases, doesn't want to know. Because ignorance is bliss to far too many, but that equation will not hold up for much longer. As we hit the wall at full velocity, we already are. Many have simply not noticed yet. The completely propped up Ponzi scheme economy is so close to completely imploding once and for all. And the fact that so many can't see that even now is mind-numbing. It's absolutely mind-numbing. Complete card house put together and propagated by printed fiat money from thin air. And people think no matter how bad the environment is, no matter how decimated, that as long as the stock market's okay, everything will somehow magically work out. Good luck with that. So again, in summary, last Sunday, the canyon and stream ecosystem destroying deluges near my off-grid wilderness home in Northern California, over 10 inches on the east side of Lake Shasta, a deluge that wasn't predicted prior to the event, isn't the result of nature. This was at minimum a once in 100 or 200 year flash flood event that now washed away soils and flora from the canyon base walls. Took at least that long to establish itself, and now it's gone. Likely never to return given the earth changes that are currently taking place. The weather makers have numerous agendas and objectives. None of them are benevolent. None. Though certainly the military personnel that are participating and being told a completely different story. Compartmentalization, from the spraying of Agent Orange to the false flag events that are used to start wars. Compartmentalization has always been utilized. Quote, need to know basis. Just follow orders. Don't ask questions. That's the way it works. Global climate intervention operations are the epitome of self-annihilating human insanity. And our military brothers and sisters need to dig deep. They need to remember the oath they took to protect their countrymen from all threats, foreign and domestic. We're very rapidly running out of time. The sand in the hourglass is running down by the day. About climate engineering control of precipitation, a very chaotic control, more like an ability to completely disrupt via climate engineering nanoparticle saturation of the atmosphere and the frequency transmission network manipulation of the same. Devastating drought and deadly deluge scenarios, both hallmarks of geoengineering operations. On that note, from phys.org, westerly jet stream emerges as key driver of mid-latitude hydroclimatic extremes. The report then states, in recent years, the global climate has become increasingly extreme with intensifying alternations of droughts and floods. Wherever heard that before? The report continues, particularly in ecologically vulnerable mid-latitude regions, just stated that as well, but the report asks, what is driving this hydroclimatic variability? Question mark. They continue, scientists have long debated the underlying mechanisms. Yes, so-called experts, the power structure programmed, bought, and paid for kind. They just can't seem to figure it out. Not good for their paychecks and pensions, is it? Moving on, here's a few more headline examples, same theme, AccuWeather. California evacuation orders issued ahead of incoming storm after fatal floods. Report says just days after deadly flooding struck Redding, California, the state is now bracing for a new round of rain, resulting in evacuations that last through Christmas Day. Yes, Redding, California. Again, my neck of the woods. Additional details on that in a moment. First, more headlines. Another from AccuWeather, second atmospheric river to flood California with fire hose of rain into Christmas. There's that fire hose term I mentioned before. This report then states the Sierra Nevada will receive many feet of snow as freezing levels lower through the week. Wind gusts frequenting 50 to 70 miles per hour with higher gusts and an AccuWeather storm max of 130 miles per hour over the ridges. This is so extreme. This is all connected to what amounts to an atmospheric, chemically nucleated snow-blowing machine in a desperate attempt to try to create the appearance of normalcy in a planet that's completely imploding. We are circling the drain. This report continues. Over the course of the week, the atmosphere will cool down to the point where snow levels will dip enough in the Sierra Nevada and the Siskiyous to allow heavy snow to fall at past levels. We're just now maybe getting down to past levels as they nucleate enough moisture. When that flash flood hit my location last Sunday, it was balmy, about 55 degrees, wasn't even cold, and I was soaked to the bone because I was surveying damage all over the forest. And when they begin to chemically nucleate, that rain is absolutely cold to the touch. You can feel it if you're sensitive at all. The temperatures begin to drop like someone opened a freezer door in the atmosphere. This is horrifically destructive to all flora and fauna. But those in power absolutely don't care. Did they care when they detonated 2,400 nuclear bombs contaminating everything on the planet? Did they care with Project Starfish Prime and Project Fishbowl, the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere that they thought could collapse the entire atmosphere? Did that stop them? No, we're not dealing with sanity. We're dealing with a cancer of control that will not relinquish that control even if they have to destroy the entire planet and every living thing on it in order to rule over the ashes. The AccuWeather report, designed to pacify populations, then states, quote, we're probably looking at least 10 feet of snow this week over ridges and peaks in the Sierra Nevada. That's, again, to convince populations that, oh, everything must be fine, even though in some of the northern mountains in California, the snowpack before these events hit is 4% of normal. 4. Keep that in mind. And by the way, the chemically nucleated snow tends to sublimate, which means much of the moisture goes from a solid to a gas and bypassing the liquid phase. Dry ice, the extreme form of chemically nucleated frozen material that completely sublimates. There's no runoff of dry ice. So people that wonder why, if there's so much snow, there's so little runoff, and the runoff is toxic, by the way, because of the chemicals in this snow. And where are the so-called experts in this equation? Cowards. Absolute legions of cowards hiding in their cabins on the planetary Titanic while the whole ship goes down, protecting their paychecks and pensions and parroting their program narratives. That's exactly what they're doing. And about the, again, manipulated zonal flows of atmospheric moisture to pacify populations with reports of huge snows. The toxic, chemically nucleated kind, all in the attempt to cover up, as I stated a moment ago, the extremely low Western North America snowpack, as low as 4% of normal until the scheduled precipitation event, just in time for the holiday. On that theme, from AccuWeather, this new report: Christmas travelers face delays due to snow and atmospheric river. The report states dangerous travel conditions will exist in California in the days leading up to Christmas, with Pacific storm potentially affecting airline travel throughout the U.S. Meanwhile, wintry travel will affect the Northeast. Very, very small corner of the Northeast, top northernmost corner. And what's happening in between? Record-shattering warmth day and night. Nighttime low temperatures in some of the central parts of the country is in the 60s, some pushing 70. Denver, 30-something degrees above normal. Some regions 40 degrees above normal in the daytime highs. Think about that. But Matrix Media doesn't sensationalize those headlines, because to do so would cause some people that are pushing the incredibly moronic narratives of global cooling and coming ice age. Sensationalized headlines of some places being 40 degrees above normal wouldn't really fit into that narrative, would it? Yet that narrative continues to be pushed. And those that push it are often the same sources that claim to be truth tellers, pushing it's just jet exhaust. Nothing to see here. Move along. Next, sensationalized headline, also from AccuWeather: dangerous storm to flood California, threatening lives and property before Christmas. From that report, flash flooding and mudslide risks continue in Northern California and will rise in Southern California through Christmas Day as heavy snow blocks Sierra Nevada roads. Again, flash flood here, not scheduled, just light rain was on the schedule, yet we got 10 inches in a very short time. Probably a 200-year flood, once in 200 years here, or who knows how long, at least that long, given the damage that was done. And yet, so many other days where rain is predicted, nothing happens. Featureless skies, drips and drizzles, aircraft can be heard overhead as they're over-aerosolizing the atmospheric moisture, too many condensation nuclei, which causes the rain to continue migrating. The droplets don't combine and fall as rain. They continue to migrate. Climate engineers control the spigot. Historical fact. It's not my opinion. It's not theory. It's not conjecture. It's not hypothesis. And they're taking that moisture further inland, where they dump chemical nucleating elements into it and try to create the chemically nucleated snowpack to create the sensationalized headlines, and again, continue pacifying populations until the moment of impact, until the planetary and climate implosion is so severe that the herd panics. And that's coming. The controllers and the climate engineers are doing everything they can to feed normalcy bias to keep the herd from panicking until the last possible moment, until the moment of impact. Because once the majority population realizes the party's over, the party really is over at that moment. The entire facade falls apart. It's not coming back. Mad Max times 8.3 billion hits. Buckle up. It's coming. So, did the super sensationalized Matrix Media predictions of the Noah's Ark level rains to hit Southern California actually turn out as the script readers claimed would be the case? And if so, where is all the photo and video proof? Yes, there was flooding, there was damaged areas, but were they anything even close to the apocalyptic scheduled weather predictions? The town of Wrightwood in San Bernardino County seems to have been hit the hardest. Matrix Media took most or all of their imagery from a single location in Wrightwood, a town that is extremely prone to flooding. I lived a number of years at the top of the Cajon Pass, only a dozen miles from Wrightwood, located at the bottom of a canyon. So again, I ask, what happened to the rest of the rain? The climate engineers have been and are fire hosing unorganized zonal flows of moisture into the western U.S., hitting various regions at various times. The completely unnatural patterns are chaotic, thus unscheduled flash flooding in some regions, like what hit my location on the east side of Lake Shasta last Sunday, and other regions that were scheduled to be hit even harder, nothing happens. Hurricane Hillary is an example. That was heavily hyped in Southern California, and they filmed the same single flooded region and tried to portray that like that was somehow indicative of all of Southern California, which was not the case. Major urban centers lie in Southern California. And there were numerous extreme burn scars that didn't seem to end up with anywhere near the off-the-charts catastrophic damage that was predicted, which is good, of course. But my point is this. Why are those that plan the engineered schedule weather increasingly incorrect with their, quote, predictions? Because the climate system is imploding from countless directions, and every single geoengineering operation that is conducted further fuels the unraveling of the climate system along with the overall meltdown of the planet. Question, does it feel like Christmas with some locations in the U.S. up to 40 degrees above normal for a daytime high? For the record, this Christmas in the U.S. obliterated the former all-time record warm Christmas by a whopping 5 degrees. If that doesn't alarm you to the core, it certainly should. And for the record, who pins the scheduled weather script? Private defense contractors like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, who do all the modeling for the National Weather Service and NOAA, along with DoD elements and other governmental agencies that are all neck deep in climate engineering everything. The scheduled weather script is then passed down to the nation's weather forecasting personnel, aka script readers, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service, both agencies with illegal federal gag orders on them for all agency operations. Of course, the geoengineering term isn't specifically used in the gag order, as that would instantly reveal the crime, wouldn't it? Online climate engineering cover-up con artists pushing the "it's just jet exhaust" fallacy also regularly rant about there not being a specific gag order on geoengineering. Obviously not, for the reasons I just cited. And about local meteorologists who also parrot the official script, they're just protecting their paychecks and pensions, and they know exactly how long their leash is. On that theme, a sample of moronic commentary from the paid to lie and deny so-called weather experts. KRCR, ABC commentator, KRCR in Redding, California, stated this was a typical winter rain event, quote unquote. Really? ABC News from Redding, California, typical winter rain? KRCR so-called news that openly stated they would never cover a Geoengineering Watch public awareness event in Northern California, no matter how many scientists and experts there were to speak at these events, and no matter how many from the local community attended the events. Before the COVID fiasco halted geoengineeringwatch.org from any further events, we packed auditoriums for our completely free events with free materials to everyone that attended. See for yourself. Many former event presentations are posted on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. But again, my point, ABC News from Northern California claims it's just, quote, normal weather, while blatantly boycotting and omitting any and all information on climate engineering. With each passing day, many more are waking up to the climate engineering weather warfare reality. Again, I ask this question. Will justifiably enraged populations at some point soon begin the process of identifying all those in the sciences, media, and governmental agencies that actively or passively participated in the climate engineering cover-up so that such individuals can be held legally and morally accountable? The proverbial pitchforks and torches moment will soon enough know the answer to that question. The weather warfare will be exposed once and for all. This is Dane Wigington. You're listening to the weekly installment of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Report, The End of the World as We Know It broadcast, brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of global climate engineering operations, aka weather warfare. Quick footnote. For those that truly want to help sound the alarm on this incredibly dire issue, very effective climate engineering awareness-raising materials are available on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Full-color printed materials which we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. We also have Geoengineering Watch shirts, restock sizes, new colors. These are great conversation starters. Reaching a critical mass of awareness is the great imperative, and we are rapidly running out of time. Moving on, how many are wondering about the now constant freezing rain events, along with the frequent baseball and softball size hail? About the freezing rain events, when we have the climate engineers manipulating atmospheric pressure zones and thus zonal flows of moisture, sometimes from the record warm Gulf of Mexico and sometimes from the very warm Eastern Pacific. And they're chemically nucleating that precipitation. There is a zone of freezing precipitation often as a boundary line between the warmer precipitation and the eventual frozen material falling from the sky. This is especially prevalent in the East Coast where the streams of moisture flow from the record warm Gulf of Mexico. There's a boundary line of freezing rain as the nucleated material hits the surface before it sets up and freezes. And what do we have? The climate engineering cover-up actors at Weather Channel, Weather Central, Weather Nation telling us about that. They try to explain away, as they did this week, why it's literally 30 degrees warmer 5,000 feet up in elevation than it is at the surface. Why would that be? Because the atmosphere is being completely disrupted, derailed, stratified, and the chemically nucleated material creates a cold, dense layer of air that settles to the surface. And we have so-called experts literally making it up as they go, or they're reading scripts that they certainly must know are false. If these people don't know, then they're criminally ignorant of the very field of study in which we're told they're experts. People need to wake up, use their common sense, remember that snow had something to do with elevation before. You don't have a warm side to a, quote, winter storm and a cold side. No, that's not nature. That's not natural. That's engineered. There's nothing natural about any weather, anywhere, anymore. Nothing is untainted. They have derailed the entire global climate weather system, period. And not only derailed, but also contaminated. So about that chemically nucleated snow, again, from the Weather Channel, aka the climate engineering cover-up cast of clowns. This headline, is it safe to eat snow? Question mark. Here's what the science says. Research reveals hidden microbes and particles in snow that may make you think twice about eating it. They continue. Researchers found that freshly fallen snow contained a variety of bacteria, showing that snow is not sterile even when it appears pristine. Other research detected microplastics and even traces of antibiotic-resistant genes in snow samples? Really? Let's add the toxic heavy metals like aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese. How about surfactants that make the snow so incredibly slick? For those that don't know what surfactants are, it's what makes soap slippery. And surfactants are used in the dispersions to keep the particles from coagulating together and descending through the atmosphere faster. That's why they're there. That's why you see foaming rain. That's why the snow is so incredibly slick, and it's certainly incredibly toxic. And whatever contaminants they name here, again, like bacteria and antibiotic-resistant genes in snow, how did that get there? What are the 400-plus biolabs around the world doing? And why would we think, given that we know that there are biological carrier platforms in these dispersions, like polymer fibers and graphene, why would we think they're not experimenting with God knows what and everything they spray in our skies? Do we think that they care about us too much that they wouldn't do that? It's business as usual. As I've cited on this broadcast so many times, fact of record, as of 1977, according to the Washington Post and other major sources, the U.S. military had conducted no less than 239 open-air biological tests on innocent, unknowing U.S. populations. Do we think it's any different now? Really? When former U.S. presidential advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, from President Johnson all the way up to 2017, when he finally, thankfully, died, what did he state on the record? Quote, unquote, and please look this up. Please. It's a fact of record, easy to find. With today's technology, it's infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control them. Do we think those in power give a damn about any of us? No, we're rapidly increasing liabilities to them. So no, don't eat the snow, don't drink the rain, don't eat the food, and try not to breathe. More on that dire theme in a moment. I want to pause to set the record straight. The contrail myth. Too many people that are aware of climate engineering and trying to fight it are still mistakenly labeling the short, bright trails behind some aircraft that seem to dissipate as condensation trails. And in most cases, that is not what they are. They're a different form of dispersion, like with an aircraft that carries a much smaller payload. We have up-close film footage of even the short, bright dispersions being turned on and off. Again, nozzles visible with that on and off dispersion. We have up-close photographs of the retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons aimed at the exhaust jet stream. And no, that's not a drain to drain out oil or fuel that leaks into the wing. They're not going to ignite the whole plane by draining it into the exhaust jet stream. Again, Think about these narratives. Think about the narrative that steel structure high-rise buildings like 9/11 Building 7 just fall down because there was some furniture burning on the first and second floor. And people buy that to this day. They still wave their flags around pretending that that's some day we need to rally behind, as if the powers that be weren't the ones behind all of that. Really? What's it take to wake people up? What's it take to shatter their illusions of what they believed was real when it's anything but? Look up, look in our skies. And again, these short, bright dispersions, most cases, different form of dispersion. What we see on those days typically is an atmosphere that becomes increasingly silvery white, not the blatant in-your-face grid patterns, but that does not mean it's just, quote, condensation, which we should not see in almost any case behind these aircraft with a high bypass turbofan jet engine, jet-powered fan, 90% of the air that moves through that engine not combusted. And on the coldest of days in my remote forest location in Northern California, I can hear aircraft when they're in my airspace where there's no commercial traffic, by the way. And there are many days when I have seen, for example, C-17 Globemasters, which only the U.S. military has, heading north, massive dispersions. Hours later, heading south, nothing, zero. Even on cold, cold days, high up in the atmosphere, I can hear them. It takes me some time to spot them, leaving nothing as they return south. Obviously, they were spraying when they were heading north. Again, we need to learn more about the narratives that we repeat and parrot before we propagate them. Learn more, and then share the truth. Back to the toxic rain, air, snow, everything. And yes, countless forms of industrialized, militarized activities are contributing to the problem. I do not deny that. But the elephant in the equation is the globally ubiquitous climate engineering contamination being dispersed from aircraft all over the planet. And based on our calculations, working with University of Minnesota, something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of these toxic nanoparticles. So with all that in mind, again, remember the snow contamination we just covered from phys.org. This PFAS concentrations can double with every step up in the food chain. This is important to understand. A new global meta-analysis shows that PFAS concentrations, again, it's in every single drop of rain, peer-reviewed study proven already, which means it's in the snow, it's in our water, it's in our food, can double at every step up the food chain, leaving top predators, aka humans, potentially exposed to higher chemical loads. Not potentially, absolutely positively exposed to far higher chemical loads. Studies have linked PFAS, forever chemicals, to a host of illnesses. It's everything. Every disease or malady you can imagine is connected to this equation. The report continues, unlike other chemicals, PFAS never break down, meaning that throughout the world right now, they're building up in environments, plants, animals, on land and in the ocean and in us. For humans, sitting as we do at the top of the food chain, the report states, this means our diets can be an important pathway for PFAS exposure. Why do they say can? Could, may, might. Of course, it's in absolutely everything at this point. Everything. Obviously, it's in us. There's no could, may, might in this equation. The report then states, given what we know about PFAS toxicity from other studies, these extreme accumulation rates in the top predators suggest, quote, serious health risks. This creates a cascading ecological risk. Apex predators face disproportionately high exposure even in relatively low contaminated environments. Some compounds, including chemicals marked as, quote, safer alternatives to existing products, aka existing PFAS forever chemicals, showed even higher magnification than the chemicals they were designed to replace. Oh, here's the new and improved. That's even worse than what it's replacing. We live in an absolute orbiting asylum from the big pharma concoctions that are advertised on our idiot box every single day with a list of consequences so long that you wonder who in the world would take that. But people do. They do. They buy into the system. They pledge their allegiance to it. They wave their flags and they ram their head into the sand. And that's why we're in this incredibly dark place right now. Let's add more from Collapse Curriculum. America's 350,000 unregulated chemicals. 350,000. Permission to poison is default public policy. That's exactly what it is. A permission to poison default public policy. Never more than right now, as the current puppets in the White House, and this is not a left-right issue. Every occupant of the White House is a puppet of the power structure. But the current cast of comic book characters are virtually gutting every imaginable form of environmental protection as they carry out their objectives of enriching their crony contributors and the money printers behind it all. The toxic weather warfare also continues to be ramped up, not scaled back, ramped up. To expect otherwise from the criminal cabal masquerading as our government is a grave mistake. From Fox News, this headline: common household chemicals linked to increased risk of serious neurological condition. How about that aluminum nanoparticle fallout that's raining down on us from the climate engineering dispersions? Stop and think about this. Never, ever do the so-called experts mention in any way, shape, or form the tens of millions of tons of toxic nanoparticles being spewed out from the endless fleets and flights of geoengineering jet aircraft. So much toxic material that the spraying often covers entire skylines and horizons with aerosol filth. No mention, not a word, about all that fallout that's in every drop of rain. Again, nanoplastics a part of that. Nanopolymers listed in climate engineering patents. It's in the rain tests. With that in mind, let's add this from the Swiss National Science Foundation. Nanoplastics put stress on trees and impair photosynthesis. Think about this. If the toxins in our rain are so bad that it can affect soil microbiome, root systems, trees, and photosynthesis, what's it doing to us? The report states spruce and deciduous trees take up nano-sized microplastic particles via their roots. These can reach the leaves and needles where they have an effect on photosynthesis. Of course they do. Filling the skies with light-scattering particles, also an effect on photosynthesis. Toxic rain, with aluminum in particular, we have peer-reviewed science study on that, kills soil microbiome, affects root systems. They shut down nutrient uptake. The trees die a slow, protracted death. Now let's add synthesized chemical defoliants that are used to create the appearance of a change of seasons as we head into fall. We have trees all over Northern California, in fact, and we hear about this in regions all over the world. Stone dead leaves hanging on the trees if they're in a sheltered location all winter long. That's not nature. The tree didn't drop the leaf from a change of season and a consistent cool temperature. That's been chemically induced. So when you see trees, deciduous trees, fully foliated with stone dead leaves hanging there, that's not nature. And what's that chemical doing to us on top of everything else? It's a wonder that we can walk, talk, and find our way home at the end of the day at this point. How much longer will it go? Smaller organisms already succumbing, of course. That's why insect populations are down 80 to 90% globally. 80 to 90%. If the insects can't make it, how long do we think we're going to be here? We're simply still standing because we're a larger organism. It takes more time to take us down, but it's coming. And God knows on what given day, when the controllers feel that they are losing their grip on power and populations, what will they add to this mix? What concoction will they add to the biological carrier platforms that are already in the precipitation? Biological carrier platforms, again, graphene and polymer fibers used to carry pathogens from clouds to the ground. Second most recognized geoengineer in the world, Dr. Ken Caldera. We own the audio of him stating this. Again, you can find it at geoengineeringwatch.org, what he did for the DoD. Designed methods of spraying pathogens into clouds to infect the populations below. The human race is sick and psychotic, especially at the top. And those at the bottom, populations that want bread and circus till the brutal bitter end, that needs to change, or those in power will take everything down. Everything. Entire web of life, every single human being. It's coming. In fact, it may be far too late to stop any of it at this point. We can't know unless we try, but it is our obligation to try. It's not just an option. We're here for a reason, and we have to answer for what we do with the life we've been given. That's a definite point to ponder every minute of every day. So about the toxins in our rain, the effect on the trees, let's add this. More cover-up, in fact, is what this is from ScienceDaily.com. The Western U.S. tried to stop wildfires and it backfired. This is a blatant, glaring lie. This is not why there's so many incinerations. They say after a century of stopping fires, much of the West is now dangerously overdue for them. Much of the Western U.S. is overdue for wildfires, with decades of suppression allowing fuel to build up across millions of hectares of forest land. This is all wrong. This is all wrong. I'm speaking firsthand. Again, my father was an arborist. I worked with him as a young man. And bottom line, with what's happening in the forest, besides incredibly irresponsible, toxic, and destructive logging, and that's exactly what it is, Every tree is in some stage of decline or death everywhere because the rain is toxic. It's killing, again, soil microbiome, root systems. They shut down nutrient uptake. We have the destruction of the ozone layer, also a core factor of climate engineering. So we have intense UV radiation frying the foliage. The trees shut their stomata, the respiratory pores. They don't breathe. They don't uptake carbon. They don't release oxygen. There are so many factors. The hydrological cycle is completely cut off. And we have some paid interests somewhere pretending that the reasons the forests are burning is because we're not cutting down enough trees or we're not letting them burn enough so the salvage loggers can go in. It's all absolute blatant lies, and so many Americans suck it up because they don't want the truth. They want the party to keep going indefinitely, and that's not going to happen. I guarantee you we are so close to hitting the wall. And when that comes, how many people will be completely blindsided, their delusions shattered once and for all? I've spent so much of my life in the forest. I've done 6 cost share programs, 3 state, 3 federal. I ran them all top to bottom, including in the field, including doing all the falling of the dying trees that are dying everywhere now. The forest is littered with dead trees. That is a direct result of climate engineering operations more than any other factor. And it's not a denial of all the other destruction the human race is inflicting on the planet. The incineration of 100 million plus barrels of hydrocarbon every single day, 26 million tons of coal every single day, 350,000 toxic chemicals I just disclosed a moment ago. The list is endless. But climate engineering, more than any other single factor, is core to the dying of the forests, thus the incineration of the dead forest, the cutting off of precipitation to those forests. Please search the engineering wildfires section on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org, specifically a report, one of our most important wildfires serve geoengineering agenda, directly connected. It is absolutely an objective to incinerate these forests. Learn why. It's that bad. That's how dire our situation is at this point, and that's how desperate those in power are. With all this in mind, let's add this report, new this week from the LA Times. The West's most iconic tree is disappearing. They say since 2000, more than 200 million ponderosa pines have died. More alarming, the report says, is that many of the forests won't be coming back. Exactly. How many times have I stated that on this broadcast, and they're just now admitting it? And the 200 million count on how many ponderosa pines have died is grossly underestimated. Grossly. It is exponentially higher. Let's add the Douglas fir, the predominant tree in Western North American forest. Last study on that used the term Firmageddon. 80% mortality in some places. How many people still think this can go on much longer like this? Or that you can just shut it off and everything will magically return to normal? No. Once you're through the guardrail, sailing through the air to the bottom of the canyon, you can't just throw a new set of brakes on the car. Too late. Done. The question at that point is, will anyone survive the ride to the bottom of the canyon? Let's keep going. From Yahoo News, researchers are discovering, quote, zombie forests in new places. They're everywhere. The report says rising ambient temperatures mean that thousands of coniferous forests in California will be unable to replenish their numbers once they die. Trees are not growing back. They're not growing back. And it's not just in California, it's all over the globe. And it's not just the rising temperatures. Climate engineering is the biggest factor in this equation of all. No mention of that. Again, back to all the so-called scientists, academicians, media, governmental agency officials that are all towing the line for this climate engineering cover-up. Will a justifiably enraged population at some point soon hold them legally and morally accountable? From Axios.com, reindeer, appropriate for this season, isn't it, are vanishing fast, and not just from the North Pole. Everything's dying. Some of the caribou herds that were 1 million strong are now down to 2,000 or 3,000. Total, complete crash. And even those are dying. And people are going about their lives as if they're going to continue like they are. Good luck with that. From the Washington Post, the Colorado River is on the verge of crisis. It's already in crisis. And they say no one has a solution. No, they don't, because no one wants to deal with reality. No one. And that factor as well, biggest single puzzle piece is climate engineering, cutting off the precipitation to the southwestern U.S. And that is not a denial of all the other forms of human decimation of the planet. I'm not denying that. So for all those on the environmental left that want to put your fingers in your ears and behave like kindergartners because someone mentions climate engineering, you take that as a denial of all the other forms of damage. I'm not denying that. But I'm saying, how in the world do you have any legitimate discussion of climate, anything from any perspective, without first and foremost dealing with the elephant in the equation, which is climate engineering? You're listening to the weekly installment of Global Alert News, the Bad News Broadcast, installment number 542, December 27th, 2025. This is Dane Wigington, your host. Global Alert News is brought to you by Geoengineeringwatch.org, the largest and most visited website in the world on the subject of climate intervention operations, known as geoengineering. Global Alert News is aired on a number of AM and FM stations around the country. If any radio station near you is willing to air the GAN broadcast in order to inform their listeners of what Matrix Media won't mention, have them contact us at admin@geoengineeringwatch.org. We'll grant them access to our weekly broadcasts for free, of course. Recordings of the commercial-free, non-political Global Alert News Hour broadcast can be found on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org under the recent column and on the Dane Wigington YouTube channel. If you're on our email list, please put us on your email contact book so that our mailouts don't go to the spam files. Please help us to share the groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which fully exposes the climate engineering atrocities. Over 26 million views on YouTube. Best way to share, circulate the direct link to The Dimming by email directly from the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org. Sharing directly helps us to overcome social media censorship. When viewing our YouTube of The Dimming or Global Alert News or any other Geoengineering Watch video on YouTube, please subscribe, share, and comment. All of this helps us to circulate critically important data to a much wider audience. About reaching those that still aren't looking up, start the conversation. Geoengineering Watch awareness-raising materials, they can be found on our homepage. Our only goal, provide activists what they need to move this fight forward as fast as possible. Extremely high-quality printed materials, shocking images, pictures worth 1,000 words. We have scannable business cards, bumper stickers, all effective tools to help strike up a conversation on the climate engineering issue. These are the only materials we offer. They're the only anything we offer. And our printed materials we pass on for less than our cost of producing and shipping. Sometimes we pack into the wee hours of the morning, supplying those materials also to legislators all over the country. I absolutely live for the day when the insanity in our skies is once and for all exposed and halted, and the planet allowed to respond on its own to the damage done. If we have any chance of surviving, even in the near term, that is the only way forward in this fight. And as always, to all those that are steadfastly committed to exposing and halting the climate engineering onslaught, my deepest gratitude to you now and forever. We're all in different positions, different circumstances, but we can all do something. And if we all do something, who can say what difference we may yet make, even at this late hour? Moving on from the UK Guardian, food becoming more calorific but less nutritious due to rising carbon dioxide. Something most that push CO2 is great, the more the better. That doesn't really fit, does it? And there's lots of other factors, not denying that. Climate engineering core to this equation as well. Shutting down nutrient uptake in roots. It's affecting crops, forest. But this is also part of the equation. You can't just completely turn atmospheric chemistry on its head and expect nothing else to happen or change. Nothing can adapt to a change in atmospheric chemistry as fast as we've done it. It's not just climate engineering. It's also the incineration of literally tens of millions of years of stored carbon and dumping it back into the atmosphere. Obviously, there has to be an effect for doing that. The report states more carbon in the environment is making food more calorific but less nutritious and also potentially more toxic. A study has found we're seeing a simple dilution effect, but also a complete shift in the composition of our foods. This raises the question whether we should adjust our diets in some way or how we grow produce or food. Well, let's start by stopping spraying 40 to 60 million tons of toxic nanoparticle everything into our skies. That's our rain, that's our soils. Nobody mentions that. I'm going to run out of time before I get to anywhere near the headlines I wanted to cover in this broadcast. I'm going to blaze through this and hit headlines only. Look them up for more data. From MSN, hot droughts could push the Amazon into hypertropical condition climate by 2100. Forget 2100. We're there now. It says trees won't survive. They're dying now. The Amazon forest is literally now a carbon source, not a carbon sink, meaning it is circling the drain right now, not 2100. From AccuWeather, a headline that already surpasses the headline on the same subject I reported on last week's broadcast: world heading toward peak glacier extinction with up to 4,000 glaciers set to disappear every single year. Again, last week's headline, up to 3,000 glaciers a year to disappear. Now it's 4,000. How long does anyone think this can continue? The cryosphere is virtually imploding. Film footage, photography proves it. And climate engineering is making all of it worse, not better. From econews.com, scientists warn the glacier at the end of the world is not only melting, it's now tearing apart from within. They're talking about the Thwaites Glacier, nicknamed the Doomsday Glacier. It is absolutely imploding, and that implosion is accelerating rapidly. Please don't believe me. Please look it up. Don't have time to cover all the details in this broadcast. From MSN, scientists issue warning after making surprising discovery beneath ice sheet. Large uncertainties, yes, huge uncertainties, that now they know that these glaciers are not sitting on bedrock, which helps to hold them in place. They're sitting on soft sediment, which means they're going to slide into the ocean much faster than they thought. Everything's worse than they thought. How many times in this broadcast, literally over 10 years in this broadcast, 542 weeks in a row, and another decade before that, I have at the top of my lungs stated the condition of the planet is exponentially worse than anything we're being told, and now that's being admitted to. Still climate engineering not being admitted to, but it's far worse. The danger far more immediate. Our collective futures are going to be far shorter than any dare to imagine at this point, short of a complete course correction. And for that to happen, it will take all of us, all of us. It can't be done by the few on behalf of the many. It will take all of us. Another from CNN, underwater storms are eating away at the Doomsday Glacier. It could have big impacts on sea level rise. No could, may, might. We're talking about meters of sea level rise in a profoundly short period of time. It only takes a foot or two to change everything. Coastlines around the world. Miami's already spending $500 million a year to try to keep their streets dry. I think they're approaching $1 million a year now. How many people know that? More, Australian scientists warn of catastrophe after discovery at the bottom of the ocean. They're talking about the deep, it's called dense, heavy water, ocean floor, affects the ocean currents, which are now shutting down. That's the planet's circulatory cooling system. People have no idea about this while they're eating pizza, drinking Coke, and watching football games or political theater. No clue what's happening around the world. Nero fiddles while Rome burns. From MSN, Miami day zero when saltwater intrusion reaches the drinking supply. Oops, one more factor, one more domino effect, isn't it? That's happening all over the globe too. Miami is just one example. From Newsweek, Florida map shows cities that could, may, might go underwater if sea levels rise. One, there's no if, it's a given. It's already happening and accelerating by the day, and there's no could, may, might go underwater. They will go underwater. Get your snorkel and your fins if you live in Florida. It's coming. It doesn't take much to make all the difference in the world to make these cities dysfunctional. No, they're not going to be 50 feet under overnight. That's coming faster than most would dare to imagine, but it only takes a foot or two to change everything. More in the dying oceans. From oceanographicmagazine.com, drone whale breath sampling hints at deadly virus in Arctic. And they want you to believe this is some result of nature being bad. Again, 400 biolabs all over the globe. What do you think they're doing? They're always going to blame it on nature. It doesn't matter what the virus is. Everything is dying. Aquatic, terrestrial, us. From newstarget.com, ocean's ecosystem engineers vanish in simultaneous die-offs across Caribbean, Mediterranean, and Indian Oceans. A mysterious pandemic is devastating vital sea urchin populations. This goes on and on and on. These are two small samples of the mysterious pathogens killing everything. It's terrestrial and aquatic. Time to wake up. In fact, we're running out of time by the day. Bird flu, same category. So what if all the animals die? Just buy the artificial AI pet animals now. I guess that's the rage, right? Who needs a living animal? Just buy a robot. In regard to denial at this late hour, there's more than enough to go around on all sides of the fence. In fact, here's a comment sample at geoengineeringwatch.org. Quote, the only ones affecting climate changes are them, meaning the geoengineers. No, that's absolutely wrong. Every form of human activity that affects the energy balance of the planet is a part of the problem. We're pumping literally hundreds of millions of tons of carbon into the atmosphere on a daily basis. Carbon that was once sequestered, now it's a part of atmospheric chemistry. That's obviously a part of the problem. It's not just the climate engineers. Yes, that's the biggest hole in the bottom of the boat, the hole we need to seal first or the whole boat goes down, but there are many problems to deal with. So when this kind of thing is posted, it completely alienates anyone on the environmental side of the fence that then doesn't want to hear anything from anyone talking about geoengineering, because they associate everyone who talks about geoengineering as denying every other form of damage to the planet. That does not help our cause. Here's another comment sample. There is no global warming. What we have is total climate and weather change from them, and they're doing this to us. It's not flipping cows or hairspray. No, it's not the cows or it's not the hairspray, but it is the extractive, industrialized, militarized insanity that's destroying everything. It's not a this or that equation. How hard is that to figure out? It's all the above. Let's ponder a few points starting with this. Does the majority of the human race lack any true sense of survival instinct? It would seem so. And about the America First narrative, while the money printers wage weather and chemical and biological warfare on America and the world. Really? America first? The money printers who ultimately control it all, the military, the government, and most media. Is it in any way rational to believe that those types of individuals give a damn about any of us or the planet or the web of life? No. They will do anything they can to retain that power until the brutal, bitter end. And they will have nothing but ashes to rule over. As I have made mention of so many times before in so many broadcasts, all the shiny metal coins that many are hoarding will very soon be worthless compared to food, water, and shelter on a now completely contaminated, broken, and dying planet. Here's a point to ponder. Will the ongoing and accelerating human activity-induced trajectory toward extremely near-term planetary omnicide very soon be the very cure for itself? If Earth becomes a true sister planet to Venus, no more damaging human activity, with climate engineering, weather warfare being at the top of the list of self-annihilating human behavior. But the list of self-destructive human behavior, again, is almost endless. Industrialized, militarized, so-called society has always relied on completely unsustainable resource extraction and plunder, looting, pillaging, and polluting of our formerly thriving planet until nothing is left, until the planet and its miraculous life support systems are completely broken. And that crossroad is now upon us. We're through the guardrail, no going back. How many have ever taken the time to view the film Idiocracy? In fact, let's call it a documentary because that's about what it is, especially when it comes to government. Take the time. You'll understand if you do. Again, the film Idiocracy. Forgive me for repeating this prophetic quote from Henry David Thoreau. Thank God men cannot fly and lay waste to the sky as well as the earth. Too late. Far too late. The collective insanity has long since laid waste to our formerly brilliant blue skies and Earth's miraculous life-giving weather. All is now completely tainted and toxic. The controllers have weaponized nature. Industrialized, militarized, so-called society has in countless ways decimated the same nature. When nature dies, we will die. Here's another nugget of wisdom from Henry David Thoreau. Quote, if a man walks in the woods simply for the love of them half of each day, he is in danger of being regarded as a loafer. But if he spends his days as a speculator shearing off those woods and making the earth bald before her time, he is deemed an industrious and enterprising citizen. Thus, the sickness of our society, reverence for nature, is not respected. Only exploitation is regarded. Thoreau continues, quote, every creature is better alive than dead, men and moose and pine trees, and he who understands it aright will rather preserve its life than destroy it. He continues, in wilderness is the preservation of the world. All nature is doing her best each moment to make us well. She exists for no other end. By my intimacy with nature, I find myself withdrawn from man. Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau's words have been woven into my soul for nearly a half century. From Native American visionary Black Elk, this from one of his visions, quote, I looked below me where the earth was silent in a sick green light and saw the hills look up, afraid, and the grasses on the hills and all the animals, and everywhere about me were the cries of frightened birds and sounds of fleeing wings. I was standing on the highest mountain of them all, and round about beneath me was the whole hoop of the world, and while I stood there, I saw more than I can tell, and I understood more than I saw, for I was seeing in a sacred manner the shapes of all things in the spirit, and the shape of all shapes, as they must live together like one being. What Black Elk stated so long ago was also the creed of my Choctaw ancestors, that all life is interconnected and inseparable Man's war against nature is a war against ourselves. For centuries, we have lived as if our fate was separate from the fate of the earth. But no people, no country can separate their fate from the fate of the earth. What is wrong with so many in the ranks of the human race? How can it be that so few seem able or willing to face reality on countless fronts, starting with the belief that the current paradigm, a deeply delusional paradigm in which so many choose to believe endless conquest, plunder, pillaging, and polluting can magically continue, but it can't. And it won't. A paradigm of militarism and killing fields. The human race taken as a whole has always behaved in self-destructive ways while pretending that it was all for the greater good. And I'm not speaking to the destitute and desperate populations of the world that are simply trying to survive for another day. Make America Great Again? Really? Earth and the American Dream. That's the title of the documentary that completely altered the course of my life nearly 3 decades ago. And as I've stated in previous broadcasts, I remember every detail of the setting I was in when it appeared on the TV that I wasn't even watching. I was alone in my just completed home, isolated high in the western slope of the Wallapai Mountains in Arizona. The sun was setting, but still its rays came horizontally through the windows. The Earth and the American Dream documentary somehow reached out and grabbed me and held me motionless for 70 minutes. My life was forever altered. I've never looked back. I will never abandon my mission or my appointed post. The timeless documentary Earth and the American Dream is essential viewing for those that are willing, that are ready to clear the lens through which they see the world, for those that are willing to do everything in their power to make a difference for the better at this late hour. Check the activist suggestions link on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org for specific instructions on how you can make your voice heard. Please make every single day count. Until next week, this is Dane Wigington with geoengineeringwatch.org.